Oh. It's 5:30. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Travis has called ahead and said he won't make it tonight. Move on to the agenda adjustments. Anything? Not for us. Then we'll move on to minutes. Approve the minutes of the regular meeting on the 21st of June.
I move to approve them as printed. Second.
Motion been made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Nice have it. Move on to check register approval.
Motion to approve the check register.
Motion's been made,
I'll second it.
been seconded. Any discussion? Just one thing, the VLC casualty and property, I know that's is it the Vermont cities and towns?
Vermont Leasing and Cities and Towns, it's our insurance we get.
Is that quarterly? Or-
It's a quarterly.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve? Or is it really seconded?
Yeah.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the check register, say aye.
Aye.
Let's have it, moving on. Authorization of lien on 380 Brooklyn Street, Morristown.
So this is as, the last meeting, we had one of these, and this, we do multiple attempts to get payment. And get it, ultimately, we have to file a lien, and so that requires you to, I think I included a motion in the packet, and we've got the paperwork for you this time, so I don't have to chase you all down, sorry.
Good. Yeah, I move to authorize management to place a lien on 380 Brooklyn Street, Morrisville, Vermont, owned by Timothy and Leslie McGee, the amount of $919.33.
Motion been made, seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the lien on 380 Brooklyn Street, Morristown, say aye.
Aye.
Let's have it.
While you're continuing, we'll cycle that through the
There's
open
two
the folder.
pages.
There's two places, right? So, two places. Thank you.
So
Oh, Tom has one, if I need to take all these motions down.
mine's a pencil, so I can't
Oh,
use sign a pen. Sorry.
all right, let's move to approve, determining savings account for water department.
So what we want to do with this, we've had this savings account for some indeterminate amount of time, pretty long.
Since after I started.
Yeah, so it's a little more than $200,000. There's never been a purpose attached to it, at least according to Penny and Kevin, that they know of. And honestly, in today's world, having that, if we're gonna put that money in investment, put it in a savings account instead of a CD or something like that, you wouldn't put it in the savings account. And while we're fronting all these FEMA costs, what management's recommending is that we simply release it into our regular water department account. And when we get all the FEMA money back, you know, we've been talking, we might need a rate increase soon anyway. But if it turns out there's still 200, or there's 175, or there's 100, and you want to do something different with it, well, then we can talk about what's the right vehicle. So that's, our recommendation is to just, what I wrote, but basically let us just merge the accounts. And not have a separate savings account. Sorry, it's really one. Is that right, Penny?
Correct. And it's earning I think it's 0.35%.
Yeah.
Where did the money come from?
At the time, again, it started after 2006, I know, and it was just some excess cash that was in the water department. And I believe the money market account might have already been in place, but the trustees just authorized at the time to move some money into the money market account.
I think, is there 4 signatures on both pages? Second page, is it
Yeah, I guess
just four now?
yeah.
Okay, I'm sure there, couldn't remember how many there was.
So it was just excess cash that was on hand at the time, many years ago. And as our checking account balance is getting lower for the water department. And this isn't really earning much anyway.
Yeah.
We just talked about, and given the extra cost, talked about combining the two and just resolving the money market account.
I'll move to accept, to do it, to move the money. I second
Motion made, seconded, any other discussion? All in favor of, permanent savings account for the water department, say aye.
it. Aye.
Let's have it.
You need to wait till 5:45 for the auditor to join us,
Okay.
or until she, is it she, I think it goes up. If you want to start item 8 and just begin that conversation about purchasing policy, you may or may not get through it. If not, I would just recommend at 5:45. We're not like imminently done. We just table it. If that time to go back to the auditor.
I know, everybody's been hard at work and it's late and I don't want to keep as much as long as I have to, so I wanna, as quickly as I can, but, efficiently, go through this as quickly as possible. So if we can move on, we'll do the, purchasing policy.
Right. So the idea here is, so, and I wrote all this, to you, I'm not gonna repeat what's in there. Essentially, what called this to light is the grant application with Vermont card. We now need to, make them comply with our purchasing policy, but our purchasing policy has to comply with that required to take state and federal money. What we put in place in 2004 certainly does not. I didn't even bother sending it to the state and asking the question, but it's clear that no way they're going to allow it. So Penny got from, I believe, Swan, what you have in front of you is from them, modified by us to work for us.
Did you include some of Enosburg too? I don't
I think
remember.
there's a little bit of Enosburg in there as well, so we didn't make a whole bunch of stuff up, we just made short work of this. There's a bunch of stuff that some of you may or may not object to about, I forget all the language, but there's, federal things in there, federally required things about, working subcontractors, that it was originally written that if we hired a contractor, they'd have to hire a woman-owned business for some of the work. We changed that to they'd have to at least make it available to bid. We're not gonna get away with less than that with the federal government, and it's not that I'm opposed to the women-owned business program. But I want to make it as less restrictive as we can and still get the state to say yes. So that's what we're trying to do. And so while we're doing it, we said, well, we got numbers from 2004. Why don't we try to modernize this thing? So that's the whole intention. Happy to talk about whatever you got.
Well, we can tweak these two down the line, I mean, like.
We can change it anytime. This is just what we're gonna have to force on Ron, and then we can come back and look at it again. Is that correct, you believe?
Yeah, it's a policy, certainly you guys, so.
Yeah. They'll need to reinvent the wheel, it's already one we can use and. I'm for
Are there any issues that give you heartburn?
No.
Reasonable to me, I mean, the amounts look reasonable as far as going ahead without approval for this and that and so forth, but the temporary hiring maybe, but. So that's putting more bounds on it probably.
And it's basically what we've been kind of doing anyways, really that, and just actually putting on the paper, on the paper, but.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion for this?
Yeah, this would need to be adopted and signed by you.
Okay, I move to approve the purchasing policy for the village of Morrisville, Vermont.
I'll second. Made and seconded, any other discussion? All in favor of approving the purchase policy, say aye. Aye, let's have it.
Did you have a supplementary for signature?
I didn't, but I can grab it.
No, I do.
I got one.
And I'm wondering, is that the right thing? I believe so.
You gotta go in policy, see.
I printed the whole thing out. I had to put some more in.
Spot for top, so if you just,
Yep.
you can sign underneath that.
Yep.
Thank you. We're at 5:39.
Let's move to, approve the debt management policy. Is that possible? Can we do that?
Maybe, we got
Give it a shot.
so we can, again, we can always pause it. So with this, this is the basis of our argument with the state and our recent reports, right? So, we wanna have you adopt something tonight or in August, I just wanna make sure the direction is correct. That lays out our policy about debt management so that we can include that in the IRP. Remember, I said, we're not gonna fight on the rate case because we're not gonna win in the rate case, we just don't. But I wanna be able to put this into the IRP, which gets submitted in late August. And so the notion here is that, we really want to, continue to use our normal customary investments in our electric system, those 300,000-400,000 a year. We want to be able to use those funds we've always used to pay for those bills, because it keeps debt equity available. And we get that there's investment needs to be made. Some of the state's argument is that communities have been slow and haven't made the investments. As you read in there, we are not in the memo, not the policy. Our argument is, thank God we were careful. But if we have to invest what it looks like we're gonna have to invest, at some point a bank will stop loaning us money, and that's what's gonna happen to people that played your game. And you're not gonna get your policies done because they didn't keep enough headroom. And so that's the argument we're gonna make. The policy doesn't say any of that, as you probably noticed. It's very generic. It does separate the short term and long term. And we also got that, I think, from Swanton or Enosburg, one of the two. And just tweaked it very slightly for us. So we know people have accepted that language before, so we didn't make it up from whole cloth. So that's all we're trying to do with this is get ourselves lined up unless you.
No, I just wanted to add one more thing, that yes, it came from Swanton, but I also know that Swanton, used the VLCT's templates in many of their policies. I don't know if it's specific to this one, but they definitely used.
I didn't know that.
Cause anytime I might ask her for one, she would direct me there, and I finally was like, can you just give me yours? And it was a whole big package, so this was within all of there, so.
Right. Well, if there's any heartburn about any of that, really, I'm trying to make sure this is kind of connected to the IRP stuff. I want to make sure it's going to be too late. If you guys have heartburn on August 16th on any of this to get Pepsi to change gears, right? We might be able to talk about polish. We're not going to be able to talk about, going from 5th gear to 2nd.
I'll make a motion to approve the debt policy.
It's been made
I will second it.
and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the debt management policy, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Sounds first.
And I wouldn't try to start in the IRP. Because that's it's gonna be, I believe it's gonna be shorter than anybody thought. You're not doing it in 3 minutes. Because I'm trying to give you really brief, pithy intros. I can't do that in 3 minutes.
3.5.
That one's a little more complicated. And just while we're waiting, just to give you the heads up, I'll give you the framework. There's a whole lot in those documents that I shared about battery storage and a renewable target and technology roadmap. There's a whole lot that's going to change. It's going to change. It's the why are we taking these directional paths that I want to make sure we're in sync with. And it's going to change over the next 5 and 10 years. They all make a key point for our arguments in the IRP. So don't think like everything is like, we actually have to meet every word in here. That's not really the argument we're trying to make. Yeah, they're gonna say, wow, you're committing some things, and we are. And it's gonna position us to really be able to move and at least be part of the dialogue. So we'll talk more about that when we get to, you hear momentarily, I bet.
Reached out and surrendered. Robin. From PBS. What's that?
She's in.
Oh, she just.
We need the
Virtual.
Oh, I have to open the- We should open the-
Hello,
Hey, Robin.
how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Get any flooding up there?
I think we have it about as mild as I've seen across the state. We've been pretty lucky. How are you guys doing there? Looked like you had a decent amount of damage.
Yeah, but we lifted our boil water notice today, so we are. As far as water and light goes, as far as the water department goes, and that side of it, it's good. We just now have some damage to repair on the electric and the water and the hydrant, so. But
Well, that's good. That's pretty quick. So that's good
Maybe-
news.
Maybe it'd be worth just going around the room, for Robin, just so she can meet the trustees, if that's all right. Sure.
That's
Hi,
great.
Robin.
Hi.
I'm Chair, my name's Tom Snip. And the left.
Hi, Robin, I'm Brad Limoges.
Hi, Brad.
Hi, Robert. Hi, Robin, I'm Bob Hayner.
Hi.
Carl Fortune, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And on the management team, you and I have talked, I'm Scott Johnstone, general manager, you know, Penny,
Kevin Newton.
Hi.
Heller.
and they're water and electric respectively.
Okay, thank you.
so the trustees do have a packet of the draft audit, the audit was pretty much handled virtually this year, back and forth emails, and then their staff member came one day, this was back in March. And from that, Robin, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, great, thank you. Yes, thank you for accommodating my schedule. We had a last minute turn of events where we weren't able to do, unfortunately, the audit on site again during the scheduled time. So Penny worked with our staff to upload things very quickly. And we were very appreciative for that. So we were able to make it work once again. Of course, we were kind of used to that after doing that so frequently during COVID. So that was, I guess, a positive thing. The first thing I always like to point out to people when I'm going through the audit is, and the financial statements is, the independent auditor's report. This is, I always tell people, this is really the only part of the audit that belongs to Cattell, Brannigan, and Sargent. The rest of these financial statements are they're the responsibility of the village of Morrisville. We assist the village in preparing the financial statements, but Penny and you as the trustees and the village manager are all responsible for what's included in them and approve them. Once again, we had an audit, an unmodified opinion that basically says after our financial audit procedures, we find that these financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. The changes in the financial position and where you stood at the end of the year. And then as you scroll through the financial statements, you see the management discussion and analysis that management has put together to kind of explain the financial statements and how they work and some of the financial highlights throughout. And then there's a statement of financial position. There's a couple of things that you'll note that are a little bit different this year that than what you've seen in the past. There's deferred revenues this year of 621,903. You normally do not have a significant amount of deferred revenues. And those are related to, I believe, the ARPA funding you had this year. Let's see. And you will also note that there is a lease receivable in 2022. Oh, thanks, Penny.
Which one?
There was a new accounting standard that required you to pick up any long-term lease receivables that you had on your statement of net position. Okay.
I get there.
Okay, I'll give you a minute so you can follow along and see what I'm looking at the same time. Okay, so you'll see on the asset side, there's the lease receivable. There's a current and a non-current portion. That was a small change that you had to make just to some new accounting changes.
And that had to do with, it's the lease that we have with, I think it's Solar Sense for the Trombley Hill property where they have their solar.
The big.
Yeah, they are leasing that from us, so basically we recorded it all upfront due to this accounting standard as a lease asset and a lease liability. Is that correct, Robin?
That is correct. GASB 87 changed those rules. So you are now required to do that going forward. And then on the next page is the statement of activities, which shows you both on your governmental activities and the business type activities, how you performed throughout the year. This is a really condensed version. It's on page 2 of the financial statements. So I don't like to focus too much time on here because I find the detailed information is a little bit more useful. The following page is the general fund, which you have a very small general fund within the village. Most of your operations are going to be your proprietary funds, the electric fund, water fund, and the wastewater funds.
So if I may just interject here, this is the stuff that Sarah Hoskins runs, the special projects, and then any of the village budget that is part of the tax bill. The 0.00%.
Yeah. And then, so the proprietary funds, the statement of net position, it shows you your assets and your liabilities, which we talked a little bit based on the summary information. And then the following page is really where I think is probably one of the most valuable statements on page 6 that shows you where your changes in your net position were during the year. You'll see that the electric fund had a loss of 152,674, and in 2021 there was actually an increase in net position of 439,000. Purchase power has increased significantly again. In 2021, it was 4,273,677, and you can see it's part of the production costs that you're seeing up here. There's some other costs in here too, but it's up to 5,210,000. The purchase power alone, I believe it was 5,032,031. And in 2020, it was 3,899,463. So the market energy was much higher than expected. We saw this across the board with a lot of our municipal electric utilities, so we weren't surprised to see it here. And the hydro was less than budgeted as well. The relicensing costs, just to go back to page 5, they're up over 1.3 million now. You'll see them in the non-current section. So those are, pretty significant. Hopefully that will get wrapped up soon, and you can kind of move forward from those costs. Back to page 6 on the water fund and the sewer fund. The water fund net position changed $76,417, and the sewer fund increased $227,556. These were very comparable with 2021. The water fund in 2021 was increased $76,533, and the sewer fund increased $207,247. The remainder of the financial statements, there's the cash flow statements, there's footnotes, but there's really once you start diving into the footnotes, they're pretty expansive, and I think that I could take up the rest of your night talking about it. So, they're very similar to what you've seen in the past. So I think at this point, since you have a copy of the draft, I'll open it up to different questions or different areas that maybe you might be interested in hearing about.
Robin, this is Tom. Is there anything that we need to kind of just be looking at or down the road as far as just to watch out for how we're tracking overall? Is there anything we need to really focus on that you could see that we could do better at?
Well, I guess the one thing, I think we talked about it a little bit last year, and I saw in the trustee packet that Penny sent. Actually, it looks like you're kind of, considering and diving into more is the financial package. I think it's at a stage where it needs to be updated. Looking at the technology piece, I think is important. When we go through the audit, we didn't find any deficiencies in terms of things that weren't working properly, but just the fact that the age of it and being able to update it, I think is important, something that you should continue to look into.
I'll just add a little onto that, like she mentioned, there's no deficiencies, but they could be a heck of a lot more efficient.
Sure.
As far as how we pull data. And as you may or may not recall, in our budget, we did put some money in that for 2023. And we can chat about that more later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin.
Yes, you're welcome.
I don't have a specific question. Glad it's looking good. Good to hear.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, it wasn't a question, it was just saying, I don't have any questions. Glad it looks good, so appreciate all the hard work.
Yeah, well, actually, I have to say kudos to Penny and her team. Penny, once again, for part of the year was wearing 2 hats. So, it's really impressive. We didn't have any internal control deficiencies. We didn't have any audit adjustments at all. We didn't have any proposed audit adjustments, and that's pretty rare. So good job to you guys too. Thank you.
What's the definition of an audit adjustment? What?
Basically, go ahead, I'll let you.
Yeah, so when we do the audit, the first thing that Penny does is she sends us over the trial balance, and then we go through and we start testing the numbers. And if we test something and we find that we think that the number is either likely or known to be misstated, then we'll propose an audit adjustment for Penny to post to the trial balance in order for the numbers not to be misstated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All set? Yeah, I think so. Thank you again, Robin, for all your hard work and appreciate it.
Yes,
It's
you're
nice to
welcome.
see you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me.
Very good.
The perfect motion with an audit is always to accept. You don't approve an audit, you accept. And whenever you're ready for that, you may want to talk more about it, which is fine.
I'll make a motion to accept the 2022 audit for the village of Morrisville, Vermont.
I'll second.
Motion's been made, seconded, any discussion? All in favor of approving the, accepting the debt management policy, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the audit, accept audit for 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Let's have it.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Nice work, Penny.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Vote off.
Really is.
Add that, the night before the audit, she was supposed to come, her mom passed away.
Oh. Where did she come from?
St. Albans.
Okay.
You know, I would know one thing you haven't been able to do during COVID and even tonight, because she called in and we did too. You know, it's fairly traditional, at least frequently, if not every year, many boards come on and do it every year. Not with any nefarious intent, but most of the time, a board would, go into executive session, dismiss management, and talk one-on-one with the auditor. And that's where you get a chance to say, hey, Robin, if Penny or Scott or anybody else, like, did they twist your arm? Are you scared of somebody? You know, or
You think we pay you off?
or like, they really need two more people and they're just hell bent because, you know, you guys have been hard about money or whatever, you know, it's just, you know, questions like that. It's like, you know, it isn't necessarily to have a crap session on Penny or me or anybody else involved. It's just good governance. So I would encourage next year, it didn't make sense this year, the whole thing was done virtually, and you can't do it when we got the recording, because she goes away or not, I think.
Unless there's a certain way you can do it, but yeah,
So I think just for next year, we should probably try to make sure we're set up, because it's probably been a really long time since you did that.
it's never, ever been done in the time I've been here, and in fact, only on the school board once did we
Yeah.
ever even go into executive.
Oh,
session.
really? Yeah, it's really good practice. I've only had an auditor as a board member answer a question in a way nobody expected one time. But for that one time, it was really good to know that we had a train wreck.
Mhm. Ah,
And they had been
okay.
clearly intimidated, and then the next morning, a few people were fired. You know, and it's just good governance, something for you to think about for next year. I'll talk more with Penny about it and, you know, but just wanted to keep that up. And I know I wrote it to you, but I totally echo what Robin said about Penny's work, the team's work, everybody that feeds that system for them. Really a great internal effort led by Penny, so.
Every year I've been here, I've done a clear audit. I mean, it's,
People take these things for granted.
yeah.
For granted.
I've only ever once had an audit adjustment, and it was either grant related. I didn't know how to do something, or when we were fixing the grist mill building. I had to move it into a certain. It's one of those two, I can't remember, maybe it was two, I don't know.
Okay, other business, integrated resource.
Yeah, integrated research, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, so, you know, there's moving parts in here, and so I'm gonna try to do a fairly brief review. I just gave you the top level before we did the audit. So we already talked about the strategy on debt, so that's included in that document. We already talked about why we want to put that in there. So the 100% renewable target, as I wrote to you, that's, I'll just tell you, I bet a lot of money that the legislature's gonna do that next year. Should they do it? Is it even possible to do? You know, but they're gonna do it, so it's going to be imposed on us next year, and it's gonna be 2030. Honestly, I don't even mind that, like, almost all of our contracts will expire before that, so there's a way, we can actually get there. If we're gonna be mandated anyway, we can get there. All of the pieces I'm gonna talk through with you as we go through this are really about what has been the Muni strong suit over the years, which is, don't forget that economics matter. Because that's what they're doing when they're doing these. So you pass 100% renewable energy target next year. If we're voiceless and people like us are voiceless, you know, you hear us complain constantly about the 3 different tiers in the renewable energy standard. There's gonna be those, there's gonna be more. There's probably going to be low income people can't pay more than X% of their income. We already know they keep pushing more net metering, so everyone with affluence isn't gonna pay for the grid. So everything's gonna cascade on the middle class, and the legislature doesn't care about that. My view is if we commit to this in the IRP, we get an automatic seat at the table. Doesn't mean we win. But our point of view about the economics, all that Christmas tree crap, you know, all those other policy goals that each of us individually may or may not support, certainly wouldn't support with Morrisville water and light money. You know, we get to actually make that economic argument and force them to hear it. Does that mean we'll get 1% of what we want? Maybe, we could get 5. We'll get nowhere near 100%. Our voice won't get heard that much because we're still, from their view, we're a pipsqueak. But then we'll be sitting next to Burlington Electric, who did this in 1995, made that commitment, right? So they'll be sitting there, we'll be sitting next to them, right? And we'll get to actually have a voice to try to help shape it. It's gonna happen to us anyway. I would rather make the commitment and try to manage all the crap that they're gonna put under it. So that's the purpose of that one. The battery is the same thing. So what the state really wants to do is have everybody do a Green Mountain Power Nets, which is put one in everybody's basement. You know, and if you try to design a less societally economic way to create storage, that's what you do. You put a little tiny inefficient potential fire hazard in everyone's home, right? It's not that I don't think we'll have to do any of that, but if you care about economics, not just our economics, but our customers, because what basically Green Mountain Power says is, you know what? You should pay for this because you want reliability. So we'll put it in, but then you pay us every month for the right to have it in your house. Because we fronted the money for you. Nice for Green Mountain Power is why they're pushing that agenda. Not good economics for their customers. It's the only economic choice for some, and so we'll do that with some. End of the line. Poor people like Penny, when she's at the end of the line of one of our lines. But this is the only thing she's got to have increased reliability in this intermittent world we're gonna live in, right? People who live in the village, why don't we want to put a 1 megawatt battery in the village and solve all those people under one contract? Build at scale, which is always cheaper. And then, you know, I talked about if we're gonna be forced to do a whole bunch of electric vehicle stuff anyway, don't just put stupid electric vehicle chargers in that everyone charges $1.50 or $2 a kilowatt hour. We charge like 16 cents a kilowatt hour with our new rate. I don't know the number yet, but something like that. People charge $1.50 and more because no one's using them, so they got to get their capital back. But why put out stuff that's crappy? We're gonna have to do it. There are companies out there now that have figured if you put EV chargers with modular batteries that are mid-size, we could go up to Copley and we could put 2 or 3 60 kW, and they want chargers for their staff. We could put, you know, 2 or 3 60 kW battery banks up there with a 480 volt bus that can also step down to 240 for level 2 chargers. And you know what? All of a sudden we got 180 kilowatt battery sitting there. They're a pretty convenient location for them and for us. No, by the way, won't cost us a lot to serve them. for anyone that does use the electricity, because most of the capital is getting paid for with the battery. So again, are those exactly how it's gonna play out and come true? Point is, serve the most at the best economics, take the next place at the next best economics of scale, and at the end of the line, do what you gotta do to assure reliability, because not that it's not our choice to have everything be intermittent, but that's what the state's choosing, is to have everything be intermittent. That rolls downhill to us if we don't find a way to fight it in a way that turns out that he can't keep the lights on without these batteries out at the end of the line. You know, just can't do it. It's not possible. There won't be anything the line crew did. We can't do it without in this future world. So the point I'm trying to make to this in our IRP with this battery strategy is you've all forgotten about economics, and that's been the motherhood and apple pie position of the munis forever, right? That's what I'm trying to do. And the last thing on the, and then I'll stop on the technology roadmap, there's a lot in there. Part of it is just scared me when I put it together, is to scare us all to say, you know, there's a smidgen of truth when the state has said the munis have been a little slow in the uptake on some of this stuff, because it's not like this is new that the state's been saying they're gonna make us do all this stuff. So if you look at what does it take to kind of start moving and have things done by when the state wants, there's a whole lot to do between now and 2030. Doesn't mean the order is correct currently. It doesn't mean all of them are things we actually are gonna have to do. You know, we were talking at VEPSA today that, you know, maybe the SCADA system is not here, it's at VEPSA, and they do SCADA for everybody. And they basically be our control center so that we make sure that VEPSA or GMP doesn't take control of our equipment. Maybe we do it ourselves. It's just to give you a range of, holy crap, is there a lot to do? And with that, the other point I want to make with the technology roadmap, because I also want to scare the state with that. Again, it scared me, but we're already hearing from like the commissioner and other people like, well, when are you going to get to doing flexible load management, DERMS, and you know, they're using computers to turn everything on and off. And I want to make the point, you probably noticed if you looked at that document, it's like, you got to build your foundation first. We got to have the systems and tools in place so that all that other stuff can work. So it's all the unsexy stuff is at the beginning. It's a finance system that you just heard about. If we need to update our customer support, what do you call that thing?
CIS.
CIS. If that needs to be able to be upgraded to do certain functions, we got to get our cyber house in order. You know, there's all these things that you can't be going and doing all this stuff till you're ready for that. So that's sound. And everybody understands that, but I really want to drive that point home. So those are really the foundational pillars. There's a whole lot that's malleable in there, and will be. Remember, in 3 years, we get to do this again. So we can change our mind at different dates, honestly. State will howl like hell, but so there's a lot of flexibility in this process. It positions us to make critical points that the state is just oblivious to right now. And by the way, we'll be viewed as a muni that's trying. We'll be the low muni that's, you know, whatever. I forgot that whole thing. Could, the low muni that could, that's what I was going for. And so some of the venom that's been coming at all the munis, we'll probably get out of that right away, which wouldn't it be nice to have at least a state agency not firing us, right? So that's what we're trying to do with the IRP. And honestly, it's a lot. I'm just looking for heartburn. But there's a lot to swallow there. It's a really different world. I've been telling you about how screwed up the whole region is for a long time. By about 2030 is about when I think ISO will actually have their stuff together. And then it's going to be like, man, if you're not in it, you're out of it. And we'll start seeing, we talked again about this episode again today, about everything everybody hears from legislators and June Tierney and others about wanting the meetings to just go away. And remember, we don't have a right to run this utility. We have a franchise to run. It was granted to us, and it can be taken away. So that's what we're trying to deal with. I'll shut up now. That was
Granted by the state.
Yes. I believe today it will be granted at PHC, I believe.
Was that 1888? You need one more, so?
It wouldn't have been the PUC back then, I don't
No.
know, probably granted by the legislature back then, because that's probably how everything was done. I think it was done by the legislature then. But all utilities are franchise. Green Mountain Power has no God-given right to their service territory either, can get taken away from them. So I don't say any of that to threaten, by the way, but those storm clouds are out there, right, and they're not, they're serious. So, expect some of that would give you heartburn, so tell me what you think.
What is the purpose of state agencies fighting the munis? They can't wanna do this.
They don't want to do it, their view, for a very long time now, across both a Democrat and a Republican administration, has been that the munis have been dragging their feet, except for Burlington Electric, and holding the state back. And we can disagree with that till we're blue in the face,
Holding the state back from what?
from the policy goals that the state has adopted.
No.
I'm just telling you the truth, that's what their view is.
And how's the process of this work and you mentioned getting a seat at the table. So say we didn't do this, I mean, why wouldn't we still have a seat at the table or what, I guess.
Because where the renewable energy standard is gonna happen, the new target is gonna be the legislature. The legislature already doesn't like munis, although every legislature will come home and tell their community that they love them publicly, because that's what they have to do, right? But, you know, the munis are not terribly popular in the legislature, just aren't. And, so that's where it gets approved, and when they set up, you know, the committee chairs decide who gets to testify. You don't get to say, I want to testify, damn it. You know, some committee chairs will be accommodating to different points of view and some won't. And since we're already not loved, the odds of a muni other than Burlington being allowed to testify about what they're doing is pretty low right now. But if we've said, hey, 2030 sounds okay to us, and then we sit down and we start laying out, but you gotta understand, like, all this other stuff, y'all wanna find some other money to pay for it, you know, go to it. But our ratepayers, our customers should not have to pay for that. And to understand the impact if they, you know, if they start adding a low income maximum bill and those sort of things, just, they're devoid of understanding economics. But we would not get invited, I can just guarantee you that.
Well, after the fiasco of Burlington Electric had with the telecom,
Yeah.
so how can anybody take them seriously?
Burlington's done actually really well with their electric utility. Telecom was a disaster,
I mean, they got into stuff they shouldn't have got into.
absolutely.
They blew, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars at the bank.
Yeah, I think Burlington Electric will at some point could be in danger of running into issues like Burlington Telecom, because they've had, the city council has expanded their mission to become the department that does all their climate change issues. So they're now doing what, they're now a net zero, all fuels utility. So they're supposed to help people get out of their gasoline cars and just everything, like that's now their mandate. But when they picked 100% renewable target in 2004 or 5-ish, the math actually turned out to work really well for them. Now, we don't have a particular thing that they had that really helped, which is McNeil Station. Helped them get there pretty easy. They made like $1 million investment on additional air quality improvements on the stack. And that qualified them to sell their RECs down in Connecticut, I believe. And the simple business payback on that $1 million was less than a year. And then they had all that renewable energy. And then they also had an option to rebuy the Winooski Power Station on the river, and so they rebought that, and they were basically there. And it hasn't hurt their rates. The recent contracts you've signed, authorized on wind, for example, was 10 cents. That's our system average. So it isn't really a cost issue now. It is these issues around reliability. And that could all go away if another thing I'd want to argue is you gotta stop with the damn anti-HQ stuff. That HQ is a battery. It's a whole lot of hydro, but when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, you can bring HQ right across the border and power us. And when there's too much solar and wind, we can send it right back to them, and they can stop generating as much, and they can hold their water back. And, it can become a beautiful bi-directional relationship. But we gotta get over this stuff, and to say that that's not renewable energy. Those are the kind of points I wanna be able to make. Like, we gotta get practical.
Aren't they saying that the gas coming out of New York is renewable energy?
It's definitely not.
I mean, that's what they're saying it is.
I know, yeah, I know. And Vermont Gas is trying to say they're gonna be a 100% renewable.
And I thought this whole thing was about carbon. Now it's funded for renewable energy.
Well, the tie between the two is that so in order to get to the carbon levels that they put in their climate bills, I'm not arguing the climate stuff because it's just controversial immediately. But the argument is you can't hit any target if you keep using fossil fuels on your energy system.
Or if you wood isn't any better than anything else, no matter what they tell themselves, it's renewable.
It has carbon in it, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Now, no one would ever adopt, at least in the United States of America, in other countries they have, with the right wood management practices, it actually is fun. But what you do is you do the opposite of what people are in the United States like. Well, we got a forester here, so he'll probably tell me I'm full of crap. I've read the studies. You take much older growth that's not going to keep storing more carbon. That's what you take out, and you get all the quick growing understory, and you end up at a net positive if you manage all unselective cut, no clear cuts. And if you do that,
But I mean, there is no management, so that's.
well, BED actually does, they actually have their own foresters, and they do that, they've been doing this for 40 years, and believe it or not, but they're the only people I know of. They pay a whole forestry staff and they do it.
I mean, when I drive into Stowe in the wintertime,
I know.
I see the cloud hanging over the Oil Valley.
I'm just saying, generally, you're right, I'm just saying there is a
It's
way.
not cars, it's like 4 people.
Yep.
On
We
Stanley Road
will-
and up in that area, burning tires or whatever.
Yeah, we will never adopt the type of management regime in how we do forestry to make it work. So in the end of the day, you're right. Theoretically, it can actually be carbon free. But,
No, I'm not gonna say it.
well, I'm just asking. We'll talk tomorrow, but.
No, you're. It's true what you're saying.
What do you think? Managed to swallow hard enough?
So you need a motion.
I don't need a motion, no, I just wanna know directionally, like, I don't wanna be. Either talking to you in August, or then sharing a final document that we submit, and you going, oh my god, I can't support this, what are we doing?
There's nothing here I disagree with. I think some of the stuff the state's proposing
Crazy.
isn't practical, but that's another story.
I'm fine with it.
Good.
I like the way you present it.
What does it look like in the end? I mean, as far as, this is, you got strategies here for core and battery and.
Debs is writing it all, and since they've never put together an IRP quite like this.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I've been writing all these papers is because they keep telling me they got this, but every time I talk to them, they haven't moved the dime at all. So they're peril, I just didn't, I didn't want them to get back to VEPSA, but, you know, but they've never done something like this before. And so I've been sending them these papers, and here's what we're thinking about, here's what we're thinking about. And I think, so then they'll put it in the right format, it's basically usually a 20 to 30 pages document. It pulls in all those pieces we talked about along the way of the load forecast and the high-low forecast with electrification, and it looks at rate impact and all these different pieces over the 20 years, and then, you know, packages this all together and all the things I just talked about, and that gets presented. You know, then the negotiation, if there is any, as I understand it, is really with the department. The PUC and the department, at least what I've been told on ARPs has been historically pretty easy and reasonable. And at least VEPS is thinking if we're willing to actually say things like this, they're probably gonna be like, somebody actually said it out loud and be pretty happy with us. The PUC tends to just be a rubber stamp for IRPs, and they're always clear they're not approving your plan, they're accepting, almost like your audit. They're like accepting that you actually did a long-term plan, and it seems at least reasonably prepared. So that's the process. Somebody could ask to open a formal proceeding, another utility, VEPSA, I don't know, somebody, and want to challenge us, and that would slow it down. If it's happened, I don't know of it, it could have happened, but these things usually just roll through, because every utility has to do them, so they don't want to get bogged down with this, I would say.
Cool. I looked through most of the agenda tonight, but I didn't get all the way to this
Okay.
point, so I can't.
But if you look through, if you see something that bothers you, like, I think the next couple of weeks is
Yeah.
fine, if you see something that's really bugging you. I just know at some point the team at VEPS is gonna be like, I can't take anymore. And so far, they haven't stopped me from sending stuff to them, but I know at some point they're gonna say, my brain's full. I gotta actually write now, we gotta get this together so we can submit it, you know, so. Okay. Thank you. Management report that we wanna do? Sure.
Yeah.
We have a couple of verbal things, that are not about the flooding. That I think we should do first, because you all may want to talk a little bit more about the flooding, and these guys all have some stuff I think they'd like to share. But we have at least a few, and so if you two have any, be thinking for a minute. I know Penny wanted to give you an update on the rate case.
Yeah, so we officially heard that the rate case has been approved at the 5.16%. They gave us 10 days to rewrite the tariffs and I guess the rates and submit that, and then 10 days to formulate a plan on how we're going to refund the difference between the 11.25 that we've been billing and 5.16. I asked Eli if we could get an extension on drafting that plan. That's the part that I would have to figure out. The rates and the tariffs would come from VEPSA. I know Amanda from VEPSA has already sent the DPS person something on that. I am and have been working with the billing company. They had done some work. I know the billings March through June equates to about 140,000 that we have to refund. But how we're actually going to get that back into our billing system, I'm not sure yet. They've offered me one suggestion, which may or may not work with our rate structure or our accounts structure, because she mentioned 6 digits. So it may be entering over 4,000 adjustments manually. And then we need to from there figure out how many of those accounts folks up the system. And the other thing we're gonna put in our plan is I gotta come up with some sort of dollar amount of credit, like for people that have a final balance now that might be, 83 cents. What are we gonna do with it? We're gonna propose that we do not track those people down and cut them a check that's gonna cost us $5. We'll come up with some idea of what we can do with that, whether it's donated or I don't know what they're gonna ask of us, but or if you have suggestions, but we'll come up with something as a proposal.
How long do you have to get the refunds?
So again, I mean, I am gonna propose 90 days. I don't. But that was just the number I threw out, because again, if we have to manually enter over 4,000, it's gonna take a while.
Right.
Or we can pay to have, Harris come up with a format to upload it into the system. Hopefully the one idea they have, they can make it work for us, but it's still gonna be like, we gotta still have to put it into their format and so.
Well, if we're looking to do another rate case in the near future, we're gonna have the same issues, right?
If it doesn't.
Potentially, yeah.
Which will probably happen, so we need to make sure we do that, we can use it again, so we need to pay somebody to put that, make it easier. I'm on for that, I mean,
Does the new system that you're rolling out have anything to do with that, or is that totally different?
Totally different.
Okay. I'm moving to others. I mentioned the Velco VEPSA meeting today. That was, a 3-hour slugfest would overstate it, but it was basically a meeting of the VEPSA board, the executive team of Velco and the chair and governance committee of Velco's board. But honestly, Velco, with authority from ISO New England, is has been trying to gain control of a lot of our electric data. They've always had transmission, they were wanting sub-transmission, and even below that, down to 150 kW generators. They have the authority to go to every solar panel in the system. And so, it's not hard to imagine that, all of a sudden that turns into, well, we'll just also operate that for you. And there's not a single community in the state that's going to stand for that. So it's a good, frank, challenging, Penny was listening, conversation back and forth. I won't say we reached any clear outcome yet. I reminded them that, between what we were all talking about a few minutes ago with, both electric commissioners for 2 administrations and state legislators who were thinking they'd rather get rid of unis. And then we got Velco taking control of the electric distribution system essentially. And then, you got Efficiency Vermont lobbying in the state house to take control of load management, which is affects most of our costs. If you're wondering if we're getting a little paranoid that somebody's trying to set up a way to get rid of us all, you're reading us right. So that was actually, I think, helpful for a couple of them. I think some of them had obviously thought of that before, but and they understood we weren't just firing at them at least. So we got a lot more work to do with them. They made very clear commitments that they won't do it to us. We reminded them that if the legislature passes a law, they don't have any choice, and they said, well, I guess that's true. And so even if we take you 100% of your word, you can still be part of the whole thing and just sit in the sideline until knowing that they're going to tell you to come do it with a law. So they seem, we'll see where that all goes, but more to come. We just take another path where it seems like we ought to have partners and we have to fight. So, but
Is our sole voice from a lobbying point of view, that's
today, part of why I'm saying I want to make sure we personally, more than Water and Light, can have a voice on like the renewable energy standard is DEPS's voice will not help us on that because they're going to take the dead average of the current community population, and there's no way they're going to get, if they get one, they won't say anything helpful to us because they've got to make all their members happy. So basically they'll be milquetoast. And, and then 2, they may not get invited because legislature's not going to want to hear what they have to say. So we're on some of these issues. Believe me, the last thing I want to do is have us spend time in Montpelier. But as the foundational decisions about what this future is gonna look like are made. We just gotta be there and be part of that process and position ourselves to do it. So that's the Velcro, that's the thing. More to come, we don't, no point spending a lot of time. I did want you to know we hired an architect to look at the, security, physical security issues here. So we've got a draft thing, I haven't even, as soon as we got the draft plan, all hell broke loose and, we haven't even met with the team that works out front, so. But we at least have a proposal, we'll start talking to the team about, cybersecurity is supposed to be next month, Carl. That's, and then the other thing is, so I finally had the big meeting with, Green River Reservoir. With the secretary and deputy secretary, they've essentially said they can live with our framework. That we presented to them, they then basically declined to do their job. The job of the Agency of Natural Resources is on an issue like that to convene all the parties and say, okay, here's what it's gonna be. But they basically tell me, I can live with your framework, pull us all together, say, we're on board with this. And then force the, if there's any additional little quibbling that has to happen, don't let anyone out of the room until it's done. They said, we can live with this, go convince everybody else. So I'll do that, but at least we got step one. A&R is saying that they are okay signing on to our framework. And I both said, you read the part where you're gonna help me find a lot of money, right? They said, yeah. I said, and you read the part that we're still gonna be doing some drawdowns, much less, but yeah, those are okay. And you don't believe, you're going to be comfortable saying we're not creating any water quality degradation. They said, that's correct. So we'll see, it's at least, it's the first positive movement from them, and I don't know how many years, because I haven't been here. But it is a step. I wish they would do their job, but this is just the way they work under the current secretary. She does not want to convene people in fourth part conversations.
When you say everybody, can you kind of summarize that for me?
So it's
We gotta convince everybody.
Vermont Natural Resources Council.
Yeah,
The kayakers,
that's what I was wondering.
Trout.
Friends, all that.
Friends of Green River, which will take 2 minutes now, they're already on our team at this point, we already flipped that a long time ago.
Okay.
So they'll actually advocate on our side at this point. That's most of them, there might be one more that I'm missing, but so it's not a copious list, and I've already talked to the NRC, which everybody else is gonna look to. And their water quality guy, and I told him, like, I wanna sit and talk to you about this, you gotta bring your climate czar. He said, why would I do that? Because I've made a climate argument, and you don't understand climate issues. And he said, oh, I can do that, and so I'm gonna meet with the two of them together from the NRC. He'll be the decision maker, but he needs to have the other person looking at the argument made about if you're forced to do this too quick, you're forcing us to actually emit more carbon emissions, which climate czar does not want us to do. So basically, the path with them is we're creating an internal model for them. It's the same thing that worked with A&R. A&R is like, so long as we can say we're not violating water quality, if we can then also say we're not making it worse for the climate, then okay, we'll go with that. That's what helped them get there. So I'll let you know when that meeting happens, and this is the first one I want to do, because again, I don't even know if I'll be forced to have the rest. If I get the NRC to sign on, I suspect we'll probably one and say, this is okay, don't worry about it. So we'll see. Did you have anything specific stuff other than storm, non-storm or follow up to storm? That's really vital.
Probably just one item, you asked me to follow up with the company that's producing the new bucket truck, and they can't get a chassis delivered until November. Can't make the chassis until November, that means Kylie, Terex company can't start giving delivery until December.
We'll not get it until next year, that's okay. Okay. Thank you, did you have any? Okay, thanks. So we figured you'd like to just talk about the storm, I know I sent you way too many emails, and just know that when my training, is that when you're putting your head down because you're in crisis mode or emergency management mode, that's actually the most important time to over communicate. It's counterintuitive, but when you think all you can do is put your head down and work, you have to spend more time communicating than ever. So that's why I sent you so many emails, so sorry for that at some level, but just to give you a sense, and these folks are all gonna add some stuff in too, but so really what happened, the chain of events very quickly was, so, you know, obviously the flood happens, you know we've got our wells are underwater. We're reasonably certain, because our tanks, our reservoirs are full, that there's a very low likelihood that any river water got into the reservoirs. You know, so Kevin calls the state, tells them that after we've already put a boil water note, because that's what you gotta do, you can't use the well again. Now that it's got river water on it until you pass a boil water process, so we already had done that. He calls the state, tells them, they call them, I'm gonna tell you which way it went, and essentially said that to them. And we haven't even been at that point, by the way, to the wellhead, because it's still underwater at that point in time. You know, part of what's important for you to understand is, you know, the reason we thought the fact that reservoirs were full was important is the pump should have shut off with the reservoirs not full if we actually got river water in there, because everything would have shorted out. The electricity would have shorted out by the time we got there. So that's why we had the confidence we had. You know, were we 100.00% confident at that point? Of course not, but we were pretty damn confident. I think early on until I realized I was dealing with a bunch of people half my age, I was using the term ivory so pure, as everybody over a certain age will remember from the commercials, which was like what, 99.44% or something like that. And so very quickly, within 3 or 4 hours, and if I say something that you all say, boy, that's just not right, I think it was within 3 or 4 hours, the state sends us, might have called us too, but sends us a document and says, oh no, you're gonna do not drink. And from that moment on, essentially the argument was that they were positive that we had gotten river water in the system. And no matter how many times we explained we did not, they would not hear it. So we went round and round that, we escalated, you know, the town escalated, Rich Westman got involved and escalated up the chain. You know, I was talking to, you know, secretaries and commissioners till 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to get people to just, you know, listen, like, hear the story, like, there's no way that your folks are right on this. And meanwhile, you know, it's like, not only are people can't boil the water and have access to water, the businesses are all closing because they don't have access to water. They can stay open with the boil water, but it's very difficult for them to stay open. So you're actually the Phil Scott administration is shutting down the businesses of Morrisville. You know, so none of it worked. And, you know, meanwhile, there's Herculean work being done by the crews. And until Friday morning, oh, I should say at one point, after all the escalation, I was a little worried about this. I think it was on Thursday morning, after a lot of the escalation happened. The state sends another do not drink notice that essentially says, if you touch the water, you're gonna die. And I said, so by the way, I'm not issuing that. And they said, well, you are required to issue that. And I said, no, do what you gotta do. He said, okay, we'll issue it. There's some back and forth, but and I said something really stupid like, well, so once you issue, you ought to get in your car and drive to Morrisville. And they said, well, I'll come. I said, well, bring your popcorn because I'll be the one standing at the microphone with the press in front of me. And we'll just lay this all in front of them. That stood them down. We were not required to issue that, that updated. We ended up agreeing to issue supplemental, information or something like that. That had some helpful information in it for consumers, but all the demonization stuff went away. So Friday morning, there's a different guy from Water Quality Calls, and I'm sick of telling this story to anyone at that point. The guy's named David Love, and he says, "Hey, I hear you got river water in your system." I'm like, "Oh." So instead of the 5-minute version, I give him like the 35-second version, and he pauses for a minute. He says, "Well, you clearly didn't get water in your system." And I'm like, "Well, thank you." And he's like, "Well, let me go talk to people." I'm like, within an hour, all of a sudden, the whole state infrastructure is like, "Oh, we gotta figure out how to help you now." And then, of course, we get the tests that prove without any doubt that we've been right all along. And that's what got us to the boil water order. And then all the iterations from there to here. So that's the state story. The only thing I want to say other than, and then obviously there's electric damage that occurred, and that crew was amazing, and they've got a ton of work to do because there's a ton of repair work down around the Morrisville station, as you'll hear. Penny and her team were just amazing. Imagine all the calls that were coming in, and with people just we weren't so angry, at least not what I heard. Of course, here and there somebody was snippy, but it's just like they just want to know what to do, because the other thing that happened is the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Health were telling people different answers to their questions. And their team was just amazing. And then, Kevin's crew, they're not usually the titular head of the challenges at Morrisville Water Light. In fact, he had joked with me earlier that, like a week before, I forget what we were talking about, but he was like, we're here to serve the electric department.
That's good to know.
And I reminded him after this all came out, I said, "Hey, Mr. Superstitious, why the hell do you think this happened?" Here you are, you got the limelight. But, from Kevin, but I just want you to know, like, Brian and Mike and John Tilton, they couldn't be more rock stars. Like, it just, the work those guys put in, get this thing back up. These guys were, I forget which day it was, but, we were like, Kevin's like, so we gotta shock the well, then we gotta purge it, we gotta get the tests. And, I don't know if you can get them there by the time the lab closes. And I was like, well, you get them there by the time the lab closes, and we get the results by, noon time or 2 o'clock the next day. And if you don't, they don't look at them until 7 in the morning. And so we have a whole nother night to go through. And, he's like, "You know what? Always forward, we're gonna get it done." I don't know what time we got to the lab, but I think it was 1 or 2 minutes before they closed. So you guys fill in blanks and I'll shut the heck.
I think they'd stick around.
Well, well, that isn't, make sure you talk to about, boy, she did.
Our ace in the hole is Eileen Toomey, who works for Endine, and she lives on 11, so she.
Okay.
Oh,
A lot of her guidance and help and staying late and working with her folks to get our results turned around as quickly as possible was a huge help. I think Scott pretty much covered it all, unless you have
Any damage, like, it's early to tell, but.
the well 3, no.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, the electronics were spared, the VFDs were spared. First thing we did is had Pratt Smith Electronics come in to test everything and make sure it's good before we even turn the power on, so that was good. Well, 2, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a little, good sized pond.
Yeah.
And the river came around the Tinny Bridge and just gouged it, and I think a lot of the stuff that's in the Oxbow came from that gouging, and So Grimes filled that in and then got the parking lot, so John and I have stuck our heads in there, that's about it, there's mud and
We think everything there's right,
pretty sure.
everything got wet.
And didn't we raise that up before, like a couple of years ago? Didn't we actually raise that up a while ago?
Well, too,
Yeah,
no,
It was rebuilt. I don't know if they've made it higher.
no.
it just looks newer, there's like a, so I don't know if
We
they
just
actually
redid the
added
whole-
it. This- okay.
Outside structure.
Yeah.
What about the generator? That survive?
The generator was half buried and, it hasn't even been fired up yet, we're still waiting for a new fuel tank.
Yeah, well, and they'll, obviously, if we want a warranty on it, we're gonna have them come and tear it apart and put it back together, but you're not gonna turn, well, you know better than I wouldn't turn a diesel motor over after it's got water in it until you have it entirely torn apart. You know, so I'm sure that's what they're gonna tell us, but that's all eligible for reimbursement, you know. We are gonna look at on well 3, both raising as a remediation project, raising the generator and adding 5 to 7 feet to the whole well infrastructure and that building. Bring the whole thing up. Apparently, well 1, which I never saw, obviously, was an eyesore and stuck way up in the air. I think we just found out why. You know, anything else for you?
Well, that's the bulk of it,
Yeah.
Honda well too. and-
I come along, other than the staff help man the water station
Yeah,
and
it's good.
update social media and. Yeah, just,
Can you just refresh me, we're at well 1, 2, and 3,
Well 2 is near Kinney Bridge,
okay?
well 3 is further down the field.
Well 1 doesn't exist anymore,
Okay.
so.
So right now, they're just not running, they're.
Well 3 is our only
yeah,
primary.
Totally
well
back on,
that's
okay, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
as of today.
Is the reservoir full again?
Reservoir has been, our water reservoirs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got them topped off end of last week. Yeah, it was a long, steady, painful.
Sleepless.
The level that we're dropping.
How long did we find out we can make it?
I'd have to recheck again.
4
I think
days?
4 days,
So-
without issuing conserve water notice,
We really wanted to prove that to the state that we were trustworthy and that they were wrong, not so much that they were wrong, that felt good. But since they were basically challenging our trustworthiness as a public health steward, Kevin and I were like, we're taking those freaking tanks down to the bottom, we're gonna wait until we get the test results back that prove that there was nothing ever wrong with the water in the reservoir. So, you know, we just held on and held on and held, there was not very much water left in those 2 reservoirs, much less than Kevin can sleep with. By the time we agreed to pump water back in, so that worked out great, and it did give us the data to prove that not only can we be trusted, we were right.
yeah, that's important to know, because. People were upset about the boil water that noticed the first one, and then when it went to do not drink, oh, I'm just now seeing this, I've been drinking it all day or whatever, and yeah, we can prove that they were never.
Yeah.
Inherent.
We are gonna look at perhaps either a sign-up system for a text messaging or emailing. We did hear from some customers that don't have internet, they don't have access to Front Porch Forum or Facebook. They basically can get email and text message and phone, and we didn't have a way to do that for folks, so. At least I spoke to a few of those people, I apologized to them and said, can't do anything during this one, I'm sorry, we just can't do it. But, we've been talking already about, is there a way, if we go forward, might even be that the new online pay system can do it. But if not that, there's tools out there to do that stuff with, we just don't have one. So that could be, we gotta learn from this too, right? Believe me, we did not do everything perfectly. We did almost everything as well as it could be done, and there's a few things we could do a little better. What would you add?
I just want, just the Green River and the reservoir, is that Any, the state said they were gonna do free inspections of dams. Did they come to you about that, safety
They
inspection? I know
had,
we're doing.
yeah, but we're already getting one, but go ahead, you say what Mike found.
Mike, the only damage, incurred was, the access road down in was washed out, pretty good shape. It's still drivable, but, we're gonna get that addressed.
So it performed well at the peak of it. What's the width of the spillway? 68 feet.
Yeah,
There was 2.5 feet going over there.
wow,
And
impressive.
I will tell you, there's already people in Vermont talking about, we gotta raise the height of some of these on the rivers, dams. And and then we gotta let all the dams start drawing down. But these rain events aren't gonna change, but this is now our world, right? So the issues that you all have been fighting for 14 years about drawdowns have come right back around. Think about how close Wrightsville was less than 6 inches away from going away.
I'm going with the spillway or the whole dam,
The state was worried it was going away.
and that's the dam the state owns, isn't it?
Yeah, and they were equally worried about Waterbury Dam,
Imagine that.
you know, so. But what we don't know of the Green River yet, and we won't know until we really can prioritize it, is the penstock fine, is it filled with debris? You know, how much is there? I haven't talked to John or Mike about if that's historically a problem. We know that at Morrisville and Katie's, according to John, will be months with a pressure washer, and pressure hose, trying to clear the penstocks. According to him, so we have a very long road ahead of us on the hydro stations, at least those two.
Now, they'll let you discharge that dirty water into the river, you gotta haul it away.
I'm guessing we're just gonna do it. It's not gonna be worse than what Johnson and Wellington are doing right now.
Right.
River.
Wellington has no pipe across the Morrisville River anymore, and Johnson has no pipe under the bridge that leads to the treatment plant anymore. They're both gone, so. And then Johnson doesn't have a plant either, but anyway. What would you say about the electric system?
Our damage, was sustained at plant 2. We had some poles that were completely undermined and washed out as a result of the high water. And it's poles that support the tie line between sub 3 and sub 5. It's an important connection, because if we want to put the whole system on sub 5, that's the route that those wires serve. We ended up losing that, and that was about 2:50 Tuesday morning. I just gotten back, I was on the couch and I heard the trees hit the line and the arcing and the flashing and lights went out, so. That was the big response. We did have a smaller event prior to that, I think about 9:30 Monday evening. We had Mike and Kyle, 2 of our apprentices, respond. They gave me a call first, give them credit for that. Their call was a meter socket underwater on Route 15. Just past the fishing access on the river there, past Riverview Garage. And the fire department was there. They gave me a call, wanting to know what was the best way to tackle that. I turned out with them and we were there till 1:30 dealing with that. We've got already a start on the repairs at plant 2. Percy's put us a road back in there with some material that they crushed from their pit, so it's a combination of, 2-foot material down to like stay mat, so there's a decent road started down in there. Rusty and his crew are working on getting a single pole in place of what used to be a 4-pole structure. That was part of a substation at one time. We don't need to have that design anymore, so I'm thinking we're gonna be up and running with that next week. We presently have our circuits reorganized to accommodate this outage no customers around, but the wire being down where it is. So we do have to do some switching at no, expense up to our customers. They're not gonna see an outage. We have the means to parallel our circuits and put the system back to its normal configuration. So that's, oh, one other thing that we did, experience, and where the hydro is generated and put onto the line is delivered to the transmission line at sub 3, right at that road crossing at Route 100. Marcus and Norder has their offices right there at Route 100. We have our transmission line from plant 2 cross 100 and then goes into the backside as sub 3. Well, there's a pole right down by the river, and the pine trees are getting undermined on a spit or a peninsula of land that goes out behind sub 3, and the trees have come out, took our transmission line down. We've got to get in there. That little peninsula is slowly disappearing because it's, you know, it's like an oxbow. Eventually that water is going to want to go right across it, and our infrastructure sits right on a piece of land that's probably going to get cut off by the river. So long-term planning, we need to do something about that. But we do have some conductors that we had to pull out of Route 100 and have not been put back up, and we're not going to put them back up until we have a pole that's in there. The pole that is in trouble is old enough now where I don't want to put the guys up on it on their hooks, so we're working on getting down to that pole. I got to talk with the landowner. We do have a good easement there for 100 foot right away, but he's one of our special customers that we take better care of and or spend more time taking care of than some of the others. So
Just to give perspective on the Morrisville plant, so I think I recall, this is not a very long road that David's describing. 30 yards, 40 yards. Yeah, ish. So about 1,500 yards of material is what it took just to put the road back. We're guessing it's gonna take something on the order of 10 or 15,000 to fill the rest of the hole that was created next to it.
and put it back the way it was.
And what's gonna happen is, many of you have seen the massive gravel bars on the Oxbow. Kevin Barrows is gonna bring that material up to plant 2 and start filling the hole in. Believe me, he's got way more than we need. There's a crap ton of gravel down there. And that will get us back, so that, you know, Kevin's team can get in there and, you know, and the site won't be dangerous, because just everything that was there is gone. All the earth was just gone,
So you're gonna take the gravel out of the river or just out of the Oxbow?
just out of the Oxbow Park.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't go into, believe me, if Kevin Barrows goes in the river, he'd be
Oh, I was
dead.
gonna say, how are you gonna be able to do that?
We've been really careful, importantly, because the governor has done some interesting executive orders around where permitting can be waived during this, and it's basically to protect trucking companies to take gravel to people. And so there's not been clarity that there's any sort of waiver from anything ANR. And so we created a very clear line of demarcation, I don't even know, 30 feet away from the river. And we're not touching that, where this thing all washed out. And so, you know, and then from that point, the contractor or David's crew, I don't even know who, put up silt fence, and then they put up hay bales and control the site. And so that's what we're filling up against. And there's still a small layer of land that we're just not getting near, because we're not getting $100,000 permit violation from ANR for going into the waters of the state of Vermont. Until there's clarity that we're actually allowed to do it. So we were very careful, and David and I went down, and actually walked it together, and he then went down with the contractor and said, you just gotta do this, and, you know, so we were really cautious about that. Because you can get in a lot of trouble for a lot of money quick.
One other non-storm related piece of item we have is gravel construction has started to work on East Olive Street for the water and sewer upgrade. That's been, when we started at 2020, I think, they started engineering work and COVID and whatnot, so they were gonna start after the first, after vacations, but storm rearranged their schedule, so they started yesterday.
We have one more too.
Monday. So, yeah.
We have one more too. I think it's next week, EOG showing up.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Katie's falls for horizontal. So,
gonna be on site.
not much going on.
In the middle of all this, yeah.
Any questions?
Reimbursement funds, that kind of stuff, where does that possibly come from and what are you gonna do?
What I heard from Penny is that Memorial County's already met the number. So now we just gotta wait for the FEMA process, you haven't heard from them yet for this, right?
Basically, yeah, they'll get together a group and we sit there and listen, and then they assign somebody to me, and then
You gotta show a lot of documentation.
I'm still working on Storm Elliott, like I spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours today just kind of trying to come. Getting materials list together for the Storm Elliott.
Yeah, Penny and I haven't had the meeting yet, because we just had to get the water back on first, but we've already talked about. Before, certainly long before the August meeting we have with you, in case we need you to take any actions, but like, we should assume that any reimbursement we get, we're gonna get in 2024 at some point. So hopefully at some point, we'll pick, when we think we'll get the winter storm money back in, and then, but this one is July, and so it was at least 6 months. For the last one, we don't have the money yet, so. You know,
Nothing to do with the state or the federal, it's all on me and trying to get the paperwork completed,
the process just takes forever.
yes.
So it does have to, so, so, yeah,
We want our money.
so we've gotta really look at, cash flow and where we can get it from. That we may be bringing, short-term ideas to you to, we're gonna borrow from the Green River Fund for this, and it will be restored by the FEMA money. We're gonna borrow from the sewer allocation fund for this, and it will be reimbursed with FEMA money. We haven't figured the wherefore and why, but we'll want clear documentation, and we did not do it without your authority. But just like we did with water tonight, because that one was a no-brainer. It was like, why is the money just sitting there? We could actually use that to pay some short-term bills while we wait for the money. That's not the last one we'll bring you. We don't know the scale, because we don't even have estimates ourselves yet, how much we're gonna put out first, while we wait, but we're gonna have to put a lot of money out and then wait. Just to be clear, so we and everybody else. And by the way, I think I've written this to you, but I still say, if there's a list of the lucky ones and the unlucky ones, put Morrisville clearly in the lucky. Not a lot of damage to humans, not a lot of damage to, human property, to the extent that you've all seen the pictures of and probably driven around Vermont with, just people throwing stuff out the windows into the street, every human possession they have, and, moving out, in the streets of it, and we don't have a lot of that, so, consider that, which is always we can rebuild everything that happened, like, that's what we do, right?
Yeah, piles and piles in Montpelier, that I've been going through every day, and I haven't been over to Barry, but I heard that's certainly worst and.
Yep, so I put us in the lucky category. Should have been a lot easier if we actually had a partner at the most important place, but other than that frustration, and we're gonna do this probably at the August meeting with you, and we're gonna be doing some processes, but like, we don't have time to do it tonight, but can't begin to tell you all the community heroes that called and, offered us this, and we got us that, and like self-servingly came and got water delivered to shut-ins, and we're gonna be having some fun with the public to help us find out who all those people are. There's a whole lot of great community building and just heroes out there that did amazing things, so we wanna take advantage of making sure we give them all some love, and let them have their moment in the sun and hear stuff. We don't need to do all that tonight. 'Cause frankly, we're so busy, we don't know many of them. We know enough to know that the few we know about are not even scratching the surface.
Very good. I know, nice to not have to boil the water, don't do the dishes, have been sitting there for a while. My wife and I are supposed to go camping in 2 weeks, we're like, oh, we wanna go camping, we're already like, trying to wash dishes with,
We're all prepared.
bottled water, yeah.
I will say our Facebook followers increased the number of followers.
Oh, yeah.
That's a positive.
Yeah,
Okay, any other business? Come before?
for us.
Anybody on, Zoom, public comment?
No, really good.
Any need to go into executive session?
No, I'm sure they're-
Do I have to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I'll second.
Any discussion? I just want to say again, thank you. I mean, it's been crazy and you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't think most people do. I mean, the power issues going on and the water testing, people don't realize what's involved in all that. They just want to know what can I drink? What can I drink? I think, like Scott said, we're pretty lucky overall, but I think a lot of that's due to the crews and the teamwork that was done through all this, and we're still going through it, but once again, Morrisville Water and Light, I think shines, we come together and make things work.
Thank God for Scott. That
Thank God for
mistake.
Scott.
I agree. Yeah. I'm proud to be a part of this organization. I think you guys are fabulous. I have ever since I came on the board, and it's been a real eye opener for me to see the dedication that goes on from the people here at Water and Light. It's something to be proud of, it really is. You guys do a great job.
And on that note, all in favor of meeting adjourned, say aye.
Aye.